Hello and welcome. I'm going to attempt three things today, which is more than I normally try in my videos. One is a walkthrough of a case from the finals of the South African Excel Championships called Farming in the Land of Vines by Steyn Wolmarans. The second is a little piece of tactical advice, which is mostly addressed to me, because I have not really internalized it yet, but also somewhat addressed to you because this is not my live attempt at this case. I tested it a while back before the competition, but I was traveling and it wasn't a good time to record. And well, I'll explain, but I stuffed it up, tactically speaking. And the last thing is a sort of teaser for. I showed you my lambdafy function that writes functions, but I think that I need a cousin of lambdafy for cases like this level 7, or also like the last level of Renier's snap case. And so I might show you what I'm thinking about making for that. I think I'll save actually trying to make it for another video because otherwise this one will be too long. All right, so let's jump on in. This case, like I said, is called Farming in the Land of Vines, and it's basically modeling the money you can make by planting crops. So we're given a bunch of data on 28 different crops, how much one plot's worth of seeds costs, how much you can sell one plot's worth of harvest for, days until the first harvest, and then if there is a recurring harvest. So the zeros mean there is no recurring harvest. You have to replant at the end of the time. And the positive numbers mean that, let's say green beans, you plant it in 10 days, you can harvest it for the first time, and then you can harvest it again in 3 more days, and in 3 more days, and in 3 more days without buying any more seeds. That's basically it. We have a simplified 84-day season. And there's a bit of a sort of off by one thing, which is, cauliflower. You might think you could fit 7 exact harvests in 84 days, but you can't, because what you plant on day 1 isn't available until day n+1, which is sort of explained here. So in other words, the last cauliflower harvest would be available on the 85th day, and that is no good. Anything that is not harvested by the end of the season is gone. So there's various questions, how many days does it take for the first harvest of each crop? How many crops per season, given the givens, how much can you sell it for, how much profit do you make, and then some more complicated questions. The big tactical mistake I made was I often kind of skip over the bonuses and just jump right in, which I don't think is a tactical mistake in itself, but I answered all of these questions individually, so you can kind of, here it's just a straight lookup, like look up sugarcane in here and find days to first harvest. But then to figure out how many crops per season, if it's a non-recurring crop, then it's, how many of this can you fit into 83 days? If it's a recurring crop, then it's, this for the first one, and then how many of this can you fit into the remaining days? It's all relatively easy stuff to build up. I just had a kind of gradually growing let to do it. But in a case like this, where you have a finite universe of crops, like there's only 28 crops, it actually makes a ton more sense to come in here and build out your full data table so that you have all the different pieces. A, because it's easier to build the solution that way, and B, because then when it comes to bonus questions, which instead of asking about one particular thing, ask you about across all the crops, which of these things is better, it's a lot easier if you built a model for all the crops. So the mistake that I made is I zoomed through the first first 6 levels quite quickly, and then I basically had to rebuild all my workings over here in the table to be able to answer the bonus questions. So anyway, that's a long preamble, but I'm trying to remind myself that that is not a good thing to do. I'm also, just a small habit thing I realized on one of the other SAEC cases actually, that I like to put in short names like cost and price rather than seed cost per plot and selling price per plot, because it's easier to quickly reference. But it's also a good idea to keep a copy of these in case they do contain any information. Like I completely deleted the reference to the units in one of the other questions I was testing. So now I'm trying to remember to leave a copy behind. And I like to, again, terrible practice in real life, but I like to just call my tables T for speed of reference. Okay, so now let's get on. So how many days until the first harvest of each crop, like I said, is just a straight X lookup. I shouldn't have even come over here. I should have just done it from the names, but there we go. Then the question is how many crops per season, assuming an 84-day season. So let's say harvests, and then, like I said, slightly different formula depending on whether it recurs or not. So we're going to say if recur equals 0, so in other words, it's a non-recurring crop, then it's just int of 83 divided by first. Otherwise, it's 1, so in other words, your first planting plus your remaining days, 83 minus the number of days to the first harvest, divided by the number of days to recur. And again, we need to take the int of that because any crops that are like mostly grown are worthless. So you get 6 rounds of cauliflower, you get 25 rounds of green beans. And let's just take a look at that. That's going to be 10 plus 24 times 3 gets you to 82, and sure enough, another 3 would take you to day 85, which is too late. So hopefully we'll throw this in and it'll all be right. So, sorry, again, should not. There's no need to go over there. I can just do it from here. Harvests. That's all good. Okay. How much can the total harvest over the season be sold for? So revenue, and that's just price times number of harvests. And you can see how it is, sorry, again, the reason I give it nice names is so I don't have to go over there. So T revenue. You can see how, if you start building this up as a let, like it would be very easy to take your result from this level and then just string on another XLOOKUP to multiply it by the price per thing. And that's kind of what lured me in on this one. Was it was very lettable, but actually writing it like this is even easier, and it means you can pull it in here and you have it for every crop rather than just the ones that you're using it for. Okay, so how much profit would you make over an entire season planting the specified crop with one plot of land and yielding one batch at a time? So the only subtlety here is you got to pay for your seeds once if you have a recurring crop. You got to pay for them every harvest if you have a non-recurring crop. So I'll just do cost and profit separately. Oh, see, no, that's not smart. I'll call that seed cost. I'll call this cost dot. So the cost is going to be seed cost times if recur equals 0, then number of harvests, otherwise 1. And then profit will be revenue minus costs. And then we can XLOOKUP from these. Again, trying to not go over there. I don't need to go over there. Returning from T, not price, but profit. And that's all good. Okay, level 5. You can now obtain access to fertilizer that costs 10 Rand per plot. The use of fertilizer decreases the time between planting and first harvest by 30%. It doesn't change the time for subsequent harvests. How much would you earn over a season? So, simple enough idea. So I'm just going to name all these things F underscore for fertilizer version. So F underscore first is going to be roundup of 70% of the time in days. So then I need F harvests, and mostly just take this, but then I need to change first into F first, and first over here also into F first. I think that's the only changes I need to make. Okay, then I need F revenue, F cost top, and F profit. And again, I can mostly just take these. Oops. Then so I just need to make that F harvest, cost top. Again, just need to change the reference to F harvests. And then F profit is just that minus that. And the last thing is, I guess I'll call it optimized profit, because it says you only use fertilizer if it helps. So in other words, if you're going to make a bigger profit. So now we want to know the profit we make should be, again, don't need to do that. So we'll go T crop, returning from T optimized profit. Nope, lots of mistakes there. All right. Oh, yeah, because I didn't pay for the fertilizer. That would help. So it's seed cost plus the 10 rand for the fertilizer. There we go. That's better. Okay. What is the break-even point of fertilizer rounded to 2 decimals above which it does not make sense to use fertilizer for each crop? Okay, so lots of different ways that you can do this. I think that the easiest, for me at least, is just to do it sort of first principles. So I'm going to say extra income, extra cost, extra seed cost, and then extra profit. So the extra income is going to be your, I guess, let's just say, first of all, are we going to use fertilizer? And that is going to be if your fertilizer profit is greater than your non-fertilizer profit. Because if it's not, then there's no, no, sorry, that's not even right. That is not even right because the break-even cost could be below 10. So sorry, never mind that. Ignore that. So the extra income is the revenue with fertilizer minus the regular revenue, which is, in other words, here we get 3 extra harvests. We get a total of 9 harvests instead of 6. So it's that times the price. Sorry, times price. Sorry, at price. Just the price in this column. That looks like a lot. Oh, sorry. Because I don't need to multiply by the price because I'm not looking at the harvest numbers, I'm looking at the revenue. So sorry, just the extra income. The extra seed cost is going to be the extra number of harvests, so the fertilizer harvests minus the regular harvests times the price. Wait, yes, times the seed cost. Let's just do it. There it is. So then the extra profit is this minus this. That's obviously before fertilizer. So then fert uses, and that is going to be if we're recurring, then 1, otherwise it's the number of fertilizer harvests. So then break-even cost is going to be your extra profit divided by that, and I think there's some instructions about rounding. Round to 2 decimal places, yes. Okay. So say round that to 2 decimal places. And let's just see, because I am a little more nervous about this one than some of the others, let's just see if I've got something right. Green bean is 5. No, it's supposed to be 40. Okay. What? Use fertilizer once. Make 5. Oh, there is no extra seed cost. Of course, sorry. So this should be if it's sorry. If it's recurring, then the extra seed cost is 0. Otherwise, it's all this stuff. What have I done wrong? Oh, sorry, I'm missing an opening bracket here. Okay, so then we get the 40 for green beans, good. And then pumpkins, 55, yes. All right, so I think that's working. Then we X look up this in T crop, returning from T, what do I call it, break even? Break even cost, yes. Okay, good. And there are a couple where it just doesn't make sense to use it at all. All right, so then let's do the bonus questions quickly, and then I'll explain level 7 and my plan for that, but I'm not going to solve that today. Which crop takes the longest time to grow until harvest? So anything where it's longest, you just look up an enormous number in T first is days to first harvest, returning from T crop, and we want exact match or next smaller item, and it'll match against the biggest one. Which crop can be harvested most often over a season without the use of fertilizer? So again, we're just looking for the biggest number in the harvests without fertilizer, returning from T crop. Exact match or next smallest item. Which crop is most profitable without the use of fertilizer? So again, big number in T profit, returning from T crop. exact match or next smaller. Which crop benefits the most from the use of fertilizer? Highest increase in profit, presumably an absolute profit. So F increase. Actually, you know what? You don't even need to. I'm sorry, I'm over laboring it. So because XLOOKUP can do this. So again, just big number. But the lookup array, what we want is the fertilizer profit minus T profit. And XLOOKUP is absolutely happy to look up in a dynamically calculated array like that. So I don't need to add a new column to my table. And again, exact match or next smallest. And which crop has the highest ratio between profit you make over a season versus the amount of money you need to buy seeds and fertilizer input costs to start farming on day one? Okay, so oops, I'm going to add a new column for that just because it's a little convoluted. So B5 ratio, and let's do day one costs. So first we're going to say if fertilizer profit is greater than the regular profit, then your day one costs are seed costs plus 10. Otherwise, it's seed costs. And then your profit over the season is your optimized profit divided by that. And then, well, I was going to say round, but actually we can round for display purposes, but we don't need to round. We just need to know the highest ratio. So now we're going to XLOOKUP 10 to the 9 in T, what the heck did I even call it? Oops, I thought you could press end in that situation, but apparently you can't. Let's scroll down. B5 ratio is what I called it, returning from T crop. Exact match or next smaller item. Hooray. Okay. So that gets you nicely through half the case. And then I mentioned in my snap walkthrough that the same dynamic occurred there, which is level 7 is much harder, but also kind of goes in a totally different direction. So it only partially builds on the workings that you've built up to now. So I'm not going to solve it today, but I am going to explain it a little. So the idea is you start with 300 rand and 100 plots of land, and your goal is to make as much money as possible by planting one specified crop. You use as many plots as you can, and when the first harvest comes, so basically as you harvest, you get money, you use that immediately to buy more seeds and plant more until you run out of money or you run out of land. And if you run out of money, then as soon as more money comes in, you keep buying until you've used all the land, and then you just enjoy the profits, more or less. It mentions here you can assume for simplicity's sake that the choice to use fertilizer or not is per season per crop and not for each harvest within the season. This problem is actually significantly more complicated if you allow that, like, you might fertilize sometimes and not fertilize other times, because whatever, let's say you've got 10 days left to the end of the season, and that's, you know, enough time for one harvest. Whether you use fertilizer or not, then you should not use fertilizer. But if it's enough time for one harvest if you don't use fertilizer, but 2 harvests if you do, then you probably should use it, and so on. It's very complicated. So the way I thought about modeling this is that you would have basically a tracker for each. You'd have day starting at 1, going up to whatever 84 days in the season. You'd have your money, which, or I guess maybe this should be 85 starting from 0. You have your money, which starts off at 100, and then you'd have your, I guess, land use, which would start off blank. And then you would buy a bunch of stuff. So let's say whatever, your money goes down to 12, and whatever, let's say it's cauliflower that has a 12 day to the first harvest. So what you would then have is, well, let's do actual numbers. So cauliflower costs 80. So you'd actually just get one cauliflower. So what I would put there then is 12, and then this would count down 11, 10, 9, and so on until when it gets to 0, then you'd get the money back. So let's just say on day 13, that goes to 0, and you get 175 plus the 20 you already have goes to 195. And then you spend that on cauliflower. So now you get 2, so you get 12, 12. And you take away the 160, you're left with 35. And then that would count down 11, 11, and so on down up until on day 25. Well, let's say on day 24, you'd be down to 1, 1. And then you would get 2 times 175 plus your 35 that you have on hand is 385. And then how many more can you buy for that? You could buy another 4. So then it'd be that minus 4 times 80. And then you'd start off with 12, 12, 12, 12. And basically this is just a way of having a single variable that keeps track of all your ongoing planting. And I guess the only other twist is that if it were a recurring plant, then when it got down to 1, so let's say we're looking at eggplant, when it got down to 1, oh, actually that's a funny one because the number of recurring days is the same as the number of days, but in any case, the one that you had originally planted would get down to 1 and then go back up to 5, and then you would plant others next to it. So the idea is that this would just be a single variable that lets you keep track of the whole farm. And it's relatively easy to kind of build, well, relatively easy, it is manageable to build a model that takes kind of one generation of this and figures out the next one. It's a little more complicated when you factor in that, toward the end, when you're in the period where newly planted things won't have time to be harvested, you have to stop planting. But the big thing is trying to sort of convert this into a quickly reusable model. And that's where I think there is room for a cousin of lambdafy that would be designed to be used with reduce. You would point it at, a row of this and the row above. So like a row of this where you've written formulas to say, from this generation, here's how I build this generation. That would turn that into a nice lambda that you could then say, reduce with this lambda 84 steps and kind of build it out pretty nicely. It's quite time consuming to do that by hand, but that is what my vision is for my next lambdafy, and I'm going to try and build that in a future video. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time.